Okay, it's time to make some bread. Let's go over the equipment we're going to need to make this 4-ingredient yeast bread. So I have a bowl here. It's larger than the bowl that I dump my flour into, but you can use that flour bowl as well as long as it's pretty big. You'll also need a whisk, and we're going to use this to incorporate all the dry ingredients together before we add the water. And also a spatula, which will be really helpful when mixing together as well as later after the bread has proofed and it's risen, and you can take it out really quickly with a spatula. So let's get started here. So we've got our bowl and we're going to incorporate our dry ingredients together. So I have my 3 cups of flour in here. Just try not to get it everywhere. Get it under there. Next, we're going to add in our salt. And our salt's going to give it a lot of flavor, and it's also going to incorporate the moisture into the bread. So you need salt in your bread. Then we're going to incorporate the yeast. The yeast is a microorganism, small organism means of life. And so these small little guys are going to eat, and they're going to help produce the gas. So they're going to break down the carbohydrates, which are locked into the wheat. And they're going to break that down, they're going to release some gas, and that's going to help your bread to rise. So before we add in our water, I'm going to use my whisk here and just get everything mixed up really nicely. I like to use this word a lot in my cooking, uniformity. If I was just to add in the water without mixing all these up first, you know, one side of the formation would have a lot of salt, maybe the other side would not. So it's just really good to do. I'm going to do this for about 30 seconds. Now that all the dry ingredients are in there, we can add our water. And this is warm water. You don't want it so warm that it's going to burn your hands, but it's not cold water. It should be able to like bath water. So I'm going to pour that in there. Get that good and saturated. Now here comes the easy part. It's not too tricky. You don't need to over stir. You just need to incorporate everything so that everything is touching the water. So yeah, using the spatula, getting a lot of the flour there on the sides. Oop. Now we need to let it rise. We need to let the yeast do its work. So I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap. And this is going to ensure that all the air stays inside. And we're going to put it in a nice warm place. So I'm letting my bread rise for about 6 hours next to the windowsill. It's warm, it's dry, it's a great place. And let the yeast do its work about 6 hours. If you want to leave it for a day, like maybe you want to bake it the next day, that's totally safe to do too. But maximum, I would say 1 day. You're going to want to clean the surface that you're going to be working on. We're going to be using this surface to shape the dough, so I'm wiping it down with a hot soapy rag. I'm also using a towel to wipe everything up as well, so there's no moisture on our surface. So at this point you want to prepare the surface that you're going to be working with. So you're going to want to flour it lightly. And the flour is going to help so that the dough does not stick to your surface, as well as not sticking to your hands. Now we're going to take our dough that had been resting for 6 hours. You can see it's kind of poofed up a little bit. And I'm going to take it out and I'm going to form it. Now in other traditional bread recipes you would knead the dough, but you don't need to knead this because this is a no-knead bread. You're just going to shape it. So I'm going to kind of do a loaf. Get some flour on there. So that's the shape I want. You can also do like a circular shape. Yeah, why don't we try that? I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to score it. This will help the heat transfer and the heat to escape and rise to the top and give some nice markings. You're going to want to prepare your pan for the oven, so I'm going to use some cooking spray. Give it a light spray just so the bread doesn't stick. I'm going to carefully transfer it to our oven pan. I have cut a piece of tin foil that you're going to want to cover the bread with. And you're going to cover it for 30 minutes, and after 30 minutes you take it off and you bake for an additional 15 minutes. Now one thing that can happen is it will stick to the top of your bread, so I'm going to kind of make a little tent. So another good reason to use the cooking spray is the tin foil can kind of stick to it and create this gap for air to get through. as well as the tinfoil will not be stuck to the bread. Because the purpose of the tinfoil is to prevent the top from browning too much while it is baking. Okay, the first 30 minutes is up. The tinfoil is still on. Shut our oven, retain the heat. Okay, now we're going to put it in for the final 15 minutes uncovered. Okay, our timer went off. So now we're going to take our bread out of the oven. It's nice and golden on the top, and we're going to transfer it to a cutting board to cool. We've got our cutting board here, and we're going to move our bread, which is still pretty hot, onto the cutting board. We're going to let it chill out for about 15 minutes. Don't worry, it will still remain warm.